What's your name?
George Samore.
What made you decide to open your own video game store?
I've just always loved video games. I've loved playing them. I've loved collecting them, and just always had a passion for finding those hard to find games and being able to play them and see how things have advanced and try all the new games.
What was the first gaming system that you played?
First gaming system I played was an Magnavox Odyssey, which came out in, I believe, like 1977. My father brought one home, and the controllers were actually built into the system.
George, currently, how many video game systems do you have?
Right now, I'd say I own about 520 different gaming systems.
How many handheld gaming systems do you own, George?
Definitely over 200, probably about 205.
What are some of the rarest Super Nintendo games that you own?
Ooh, I have a lot of Super Nintendo games. Some of the rarest ones, I have Chrono Trigger, I have Super Mario RPG, Harvest Moon.
Tell us about your original Nintendo collection.
I have a pretty extensive original Nintendo collection. I have about 590 titles, close to 200 in the box with the manuals and all the books and everything, including some of the rare titles. Like I have a Nintendo World Championship cartridge, and I have some other games that were remade, some modern games that were remade by a company that are pretty neat. I have a game called Sudoku that was remade. It never came out for the original Nintendo, and it was remade. I have another Donkey Kong game that was remade for the Nintendo, and several others.
I hear that you have built some mini arcades.
I do have several arcades that we custom built. I have a tabletop arcade similar to one of the Bally Midway arcades that you saw at like Pizza Hut. If you went to Pizza Hut, where two people can play on both sides, we actually built them from scratch. They have 60 games built in. Like I have 2 of them. I used Pac-Man as the artwork on the outside of the arcade, and I have 60 games built into them, like all the original arcade games, Donkey Kong, Centipede, Frogger, all the good old games.
What was your favorite system growing up as a kid?
My favorite system growing up would have to be the ColecoVision. It came out in, like, I would say 1983, a little bit after the Atari. And the Atari was definitely a groundbreaking system that really improved video games to bring us to where we are today. The ColecoVision went one step further and gave you arcade quality graphics, very similar to the arcade. So it was a great system.
Now, George, tell us a little bit about your rare Atari games that you have.
I have many, many Atari games. I probably have about 850 Atari games. I have almost all the X-rated games, like Custer's Revenge, Bachelor Party, Night on the Town, some of the real rare games that were made by Swedish Erotica. They weren't made in the United States. They had to be shipped from overseas. It was very strict about the X-rated games. And I also have one that's a double ender. You turn the cartridge upside down and it plays one game, and on the other side it plays another game. Pretty neat concept.
What are some of your goals over the next 10 years?
In the next 10 years, I'd like to definitely expand my store. I'm real close to doing that, buying a bigger building so I can display more product. But even more than that, I'd like to open up an arcade. And I'd like to have a museum so that all the kids, grown-ups, people can come in and see like a timeline of all the game systems and how everything's evolved to where it is today.
We know that you do some customizations and repairs. Tell us about your customizations that you...
Some really neat stuff. We try to go the extra mile at my store. I have a lot of the handheld systems, the Nintendo DS's, the PSPs, that we've actually made see-through. They look like glass. You can actually see all the way through. You can see the chips inside. I have some Xboxes that we made that were like glass that you can see all the way through. We put LED lights in. Even went as far as making the fans out of plexiglass, making the disc drive out of plexiglass, so you can actually see the disc spin while the system's playing. But we've also I've got a DS that's all solid chrome, really neat looking. I've got some that are chrome red, chrome green, two tones. So some of the things you wouldn't find from the manufacturer that make them very unique.
Done. What makes you want to do that to the system, George?
Just always been intrigued by, things that light up, things that are bright. I love bright colors and things like that. And, I've always wanted to have something different than everybody else. And most of my systems are very unique.
What are some of the coolest handhelds that you have?
I have a TurboGrafx handheld video game player. They're pretty rare. Turbo Duo. It's very, very hard to find. I actually just acquired a Nintendo. It was actually made by an aftermarket company, but it plays Nintendo games, Super Nintendo games, and Sega Genesis games. It's all in a handheld with an LCD light-up screen. It's got about a 6-hour battery. And the cool thing about it is I can buy all the old games, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, or Sega, and play them right there with my handheld. Take it with me camping. It also plugs into the TV, and it's got wireless remotes, so I can actually play it on my big screen.
George, is it true that you do have some rare Nintendo 64 items?
Oh yes, I've got just about all the colored N64s. One of the rarest things I have a Zelda 64, which those are pretty hard to find. But I also acquired a CD, a Zelda 64 DD, the disc drive that snaps onto the bottom of the Nintendo 64. Very limited production. 5,000 of them were distributed into Europe, and right after they were distributed, the manufacturers decided to pull it off the shelf because it was so easy to bootleg games and make copies and just hand them over to your neighbor. So a very rare system.
What do you think about the current gaming society?
Oh, I think it's great. We've actually came miles and miles. If I could see where we are today when I was a kid, I would just absolutely faint. It's absolutely phenomenal. And I encourage all the competition between Microsoft and Nintendo and PlayStation to get better games and better graphics and more fun.
George, do you see another gaming crash like there was in 1984?
I do not. Games have came so far and evolved so much that there's actually a game out there for anybody, whether you're 2 years old or whether you're 90 years old. There's something that would attract anybody. And they're a lot more complex now, not near as boring. I do not see that happening.
There's lots of people nowadays that mod their systems and bootleg games, and with all systems that's out there. What do you think about that in this day and age?
I think people should be allowed to do what they want if they bought the system. I don't think people should bootleg the new games that the companies are still making money on, because we want these companies to succeed, to be able to produce more games and come out with newer games. But as far as the older games, the Nintendo, the Super Nintendo, original Xbox, I don't see a problem with it, as long as they're not still making money on it.
Is it true that you're trying to get into the Guinness Book of World Records?
I want to get in the Guinness Book of World Records for having the most playable video game systems. I'm up to about 520 game systems. I'm not exactly sure where the current record is as of today. The last time I checked, it was like 512. So I'm real close. I think I've exceeded, and we're about ready to put the numbers down and get everything in.